On the massive altar, there was an eerie silence. Everyone stood frozen, gazing at the young figure still standing in the center of the plaza. Though his spiritual energy had visibly waned, he remained calm, his pitch-black eyes as deep as a bottomless pit, exuding an aura of inscrutable mystery. At this moment, many of the powerful beings present couldn't help but feel a trace of reverence toward this human, who appeared to be only a 7th grade supreme. This reverence stemmed from his overwhelming strength. At the beginning, no one would have believed that Chen could have any chance of defeating Bai Ming in their battle. When they first saw him challenge Bai Ming, they all looked at him with pity. But now, reality had proven them wrong. That it wasn't that Chen was arrogantly foolish. It was that he truly possessed the strength to back up his challenge. They had simply been too blind to see it. This guy is truly unfathomable, someone whispered after a long period of stunned silence. With his 7th grade supreme power, he had managed to defeat Bai Ming, who was at the 8th grade supreme level and possessed a semi-divine artifact. Most importantly, this guy also wielded a divine technique. These hidden cards and techniques made it clear why Chen had remained unafraid even when facing Bai Ming. While many powerful figures were still in awe, the Phoenix Clan's experts appeared somewhat dazed. In particular, Bai Bin stood frozen, staring blankly at the massive Phoenix lying on the ground, bloodied and in a pathetic state. It was as though he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Their cold Phoenix Clan's prodigy had actually lost like this? And not only that, after using all his tricks, he was still defeated by a mere 7th grade supreme human. Beside him, Chi Hongwu's lips parted in disbelief, her delicate face showing shock. After a long while, she rubbed her eyes. Finally, she let out a sigh and muttered, Bai Ming actually lost. She knew that Bai Ming had truly fallen this time. So many teams had witnessed this event firsthand. When the news spread back to the Ice Phoenix Clan, Bai Ming's reputation would take a major hit. The elders of the Phoenix Clan, who were incredibly proud, would surely be disappointed to learn that Bai Ming had been defeated by a human with 7th grade supreme power. They might even restrict his access to valuable resources. Bai Ming's future was bleak. While many powerful beings were still processing the shock, Nine Nether was the first to regain her composure. She looked at Chen, whose spiritual energy was nearly exhausted, and immediately signaled to Mo Feng and the others. They quickly rushed forward, surrounding Chen to protect him. At this moment, Chen was clearly drained. If anyone took advantage of the situation, it could lead to disastrous consequences, so they had to prevent such a thing from happening. However, Nine Nether's caution was somewhat unnecessary. The look in everyone's eyes as they gazed at Chen was one of awe and solemnity. Even though they understood that Chen's strength was nearly depleted, with only a third of his power remaining, they remembered his earlier display of reckless, death-defying madness. No one dared to harbor any ill intentions. They were all afraid that if they provoked him again, he might sacrifice himself once more and drag them into the same fate. That would be something they would regret deeply. Chen glanced at Nine Nether and the others, letting out a small sigh of relief. Then, he sat down cross-legged, calming the turbulent spiritual energy within him. He was also surprised by his ability to fully unleash the body sacrifice demon fist earlier. Though he had been cultivating the intense and violent will of the body sacrifice demon fist for some time, he had never truly been able to activate its full power. However, in the previous moment, he had sensed a tremendous crisis from Bai Ming's most powerful attack. In that moment of imminent danger, his bloodline had been ignited, and instead of dodging, he had chosen to face the attack head-on. This reckless path had perfectly matched the ferocity of the body sacrifice demon fist, allowing him to unleash its power. Not seeking a path of survival, only a path of death, dying to be reborn. Chen muttered to himself, a sense of satisfaction welling up within him that he knew that, after this battle, he had gained a deeper understanding of the body sacrifice demon fist. From now on, as long as he refined it further, he wouldn't need to be pushed to the brink of death to unleash its power. This divine technique was indeed far beyond ordinary techniques. Just its aura alone was enough to shatter an enemy's will. To fight that Chen quietly circulated his spiritual energy within his body. Bai Bin and the others finally came to their senses. They glanced fearfully at Mu Chun in the distance before quickly moving towards the altar, in the blood-red lake. Bai Ming transformed back into his human form that he lay in the lake, disheveled, with his eyes tightly closed, unaware of whether he was alive or dead, clearly suffering from serious injuries. Bai Bin and the others hurriedly pulled him out and returned to the altar. However, this time, they dared not approach the direction where Mu Chun was. Although they were members of the Phoenix clan, a clan of supreme nobility, no amount of nobility could stand against a hard fist. If they didn't want to completely lose face, it was best to avoid provoking Mu Chun further. As for the immortal bird's inheritance essence blood, it seemed it was no longer within their reach. Despite their overwhelming numbers, they might have still posed a threat to Mu Chun if they all charged at him. But after seeing the pale faces of his companions, Bai Bin understood that their spirits had already been crushed by Mu Chun. Even if they made a move now, it would be futile. This time, they had been completely suppressed by Mu Chun. After they brought the severely injured Bai Ming back, no one noticed that the Phoenix blood lake, formed by Bai Ming's body, had quietly seeped into the dark earth outside the altar. After absorbing the blood, the dark earth seemed to grow even more somber and sinister. Mu Chun's meditation lasted for about 10 minutes before his eyes slowly opened. The previously sluggish spiritual energy fluctuations around him had significantly recovered, and his dark eyes once again gleamed with vitality. He waved his sleeve and stood up. As he did, many eyes outside the altar immediately turned toward him, their expressions a mix of awe and fear. Mu Chun scanned the area, understanding in his heart that after this battle, none of the strong individuals present would dare challenge him easily. Unless something unexpected happened, he would be able to reach the immortal bird's stone statue and obtain the inheritance essence blood. His gaze suddenly shifted toward the area where many Phoenix clan experts had gathered. When they saw him looking, they immediately became on edge, though there was no overwhelming fear in their expressions. After all, no matter what, they were still members of the Phoenix clan. Even if they were just a branch of the clan, they were proud. They knew how powerful Mu Chun was, but they didn't worry that he would slaughter them all. Bai Ming's failure in the competition for the inheritance essence blood hadn't caused any displeasure from the Phoenix clan toward Mu Chun. However, if Mu Chun were to directly slaughter all of them here, it would truly offend the Phoenix clan. The consequences of such an act would be something no one could bear, not even the 9 Nether Sparrow clan. Mu Chun clearly understood this, so he merely glanced at Bai Bin and the others with a cold, indifferent gaze, the warning in his eyes unmistakable. The others could only swallow their indignation and dare not argue with Mu Chun any longer. Seeing this, Mu Chun lost interest in wasting any more time with them and turned his attention to the other 2 battlefields. There, the fierce battles were slowly coming to an end. On those 2 battlefields, whether it was Kong Ling of the 9-colored Peacock clan, Zhong Qingfeng of the Kunpeng clan, Lu Ho of the Heavenly Ape clan, or the strong fighter from the Heavenly Crane clan, all of them were genuine 8th-grade supremes. Their conflicts had been intense and eye-catching. However, their battles lacked the bloody aura that had surrounded the fight between Mu Chun and Bai Ming. Clearly, they had shown restraint and didn't want to fight to the death like Mu Chun had. In the end, the victors were Zhong Qingfeng of the Kunpeng clan and Lu Ho of the Heavenly Ape clan, each winning by a slight advantage. However, from Mu Chun's perspective, Kong Ling of the 9-colored Peacock clan was no weaker than Zhong Qingfeng. The fact that Zhong Qingfeng had won probably involved some form of deal. Otherwise, if it had been a fair fight, Kong Ling might have been the one to come out on top. Mu Chun, however, had no interest in delving into the details of these matters. He wasn't greedy. His sole objective was the immortal bird's inheritance essence blood, and he didn't care at all who would end up with the other 2 inheritance bloods. Once the 2 battlefields had settled with their respective victors, everyone's gaze instinctively shifted towards the direction where Mu Chun was. The 4 8th-grade Supremes all had a peculiar light flickering in their eyes. They had witnessed the scene where Mu Chun had defeated Bai Ming, so their hearts were undeniably shaken. Their strength was on par with Bai Ming's, and if it had been them facing him, without a life-and-death struggle, it would have been impossible to defeat him. However, seeing Mu Chun defeat Bai Ming and severely injure him, They realized that Mu Chen could achieve the same result against them. This thought, Kong Ling, Zhong Qingfeng, and the others couldn't help but wear serious expressions. Their former dismissive attitude towards Mu Chen had vanished, replaced by a cautious respect as they now saw him as their equal. This Mu Chen is truly extraordinary, Zhong Qingfeng murmured. When Zhong Tung sent the message, he only mentioned that Mu Chen had the strength to match a 7th grade Supreme. But now, seeing this, he has even defeated an 8th grade Supreme. His progress has been so rapid that it's astonishing. Zhong Qingfeng looked at Mu Chen deeply, completely dismissing the earlier messages from Zhong Tung from his mind. This was not a kind of opponent to underestimate recklessly. But Mu Chen paid no attention to their thoughts. After seeing them conclude their battles, he turned his gaze towards the back of the plaza. There, a myriad of stone steps led to the towering figure of the ancient Undying bird, its wings stretched wide like a canopy. At this moment, the stone statue of the Undying bird seemed to glow faintly, as if calling out to the final victor. Mu Chen took a deep breath, gave a slight nod to Jiuyu, and then his figure shot forward like a streak of lightning, heading directly for the stone statue. The inheritance essence blood of the Undying bird was within his grasp. Whoosh! As Mu Chen sped towards the Undying bird statue, Zhong Tung and Lu Ho on the other 2 plazas also shot forward at the same time, their targets set on the 2 stone statues at the top of their respective stone stairways. They had endured numerous hardships to reach this point, and now, it was time to reap the rewards. On the altar, many eyes were fixed on the 3 figures racing towards the stone statues. Their eyes burned with excitement. This was the inheritance essence blood of a super divine beast. If they could obtain it, it would allow them to evolve their own bloodlines, clearing the path for their cultivation. It was even possible that, with this blood, they could eventually step into the realm of Earth Supremes. But unfortunately, the 3 inheritance essence bloods had already been claimed. Faced with such formidable competitors, all they could do was watch as the bountiful rewards were claimed by others. Under the many burning gazes, Mu Chen's figure appeared at the end of the stone stairs. Standing before the stone statue, he stared intently at the statue, which stood about 1,000 feet tall. Its surface was weathered and ancient, bearing the marks of time. The statue's wings stretched out like clouds, casting a shadow over the entire sky. Flames seemed to burn fiercely from its body, and even though it had been fallen for thousands of years, there still seemed to be a faint pulse of life emanating from it. Mu Chen's expression turned serious. Even though it was only a statue before him, he could still feel an indescribable sense of pressure. It felt as if this pressure was directly attacking his soul, weighing down his heart like a heavy stone. Anyone with a weaker mind would likely have already collapsed under the intensity of it. This was the power of a super divine beast. This was the power of a heavenly supreme. As Mu Chen was absorbing the awe-inspiring pressure from the statue, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He saw that the flames on the statue of the Undying bird, which had previously seemed non-existent, were now burning brightly. The flames were incredibly strange, glowing with a crystal-like color. They seemed almost intangible, but as they burned, a vast life force surged from them, seemingly indestructible. It's the top-tier Undying flame. Mu Chen quickly recognized the crystal-like fire. He felt a familiar energy emanating from it, because when he had bonded with Jiuyu through a bloodline connection, he had obtained the Undying flame from her after stepping into the supreme stage. He had used it to refine his spiritual energy. Therefore, the power of the Undying flame was also contained within his spiritual energy. The feeling of familiarity was clearly rooted in this connection. However, the crystal-like Undying flame before him was clearly the highest level of its kind, far more powerful than the purple Undying flame within the 9 nether. As the crystal-like flame surged forth, Mu Chen suddenly noticed the stone statue seemed to tremble. His heart skipped a beat as he saw the tightly shut eyes of the ancient Undying birdstone statue abruptly snap open. Inside the stone statue's eyes was a chaotic void, devoid of pupils, but once they opened, a vast torrent of Undying flames surged forth, like a pillar of fire, directly enveloping Mu Chen. As the crystal-like Undying flame hit him, Mu Chen's face immediately contorted in agony. An indescribable burning pain spread through every part of his body, so intense that it nearly caused him to lose consciousness. Fortunately, his willpower was strong, and he wasn't overwhelmed by the pain that he quickly activated his dragon and phoenix body, and the sounds of dragons and phoenixes echoed within him, shaking his flesh and blood. Resisting the domineering burn of the undying flame, golden light surged across his skin, and beneath it, the spirits of the true dragon and phoenix swirled, constantly absorbing the undying flame, trying to shield Mu Chen from the burning damage. But even with these layers of protection, his skin was quickly burned open, and his flesh began to protrude. From a distance, it looked as though the fierce, undying flame was about to destroy him completely. This sudden scene caused many of the powerful individuals on the altar to change their expressions. There was a trace of horror in their eyes, clearly realizing the terrifying nature of the undying flame. However, this was not happening just to Mu Chen at that moment. Similar changes occurred before the 10,000 spirit bird and ancient beast stone statues. The 10,000 spirit bird stone statue erupted in a blinding light, accompanied by the faint sound of a clear, piercing bird call. The light enveloped Xun'er, immediately forcing him to kneel, his bones creaking under the pressure. The ancient beast stone statue, on the other hand, was even more domineering. That it raised a massive foot and viciously stomped toward Lu Ho. Seeing this, everyone quickly understood. This was clearly the final trial left by the three beast sovereigns. If one could pass, they would gain the inheritance essence blood. However, at this moment, both Xun'er and Lu Ho seemed to be handling the trials with relative ease. It was no surprise. After all, they were divine beasts, and their races were related to the 10,000 spirit bird and the ancient beast. So, the trial was not too difficult for them. On the other hand, Mu Chen's situation was truly unfortunate. The crystal-like fire burned fiercely, showing no mercy as it scorched Mu Chen's skin and flesh. This scene didn't seem like a trial. It felt more like he was being burned alive as an outsider. Humph! Foolish creature, that a mere human dares to meddle with the divine beast clan? Seeing this scene, Bai Bin and the others breathed a sigh of relief, their eyes showing a mocking glint. They had been thoroughly defeated by Mu Chen before, but now, they could finally release their frustration. Seeing Mu Chen suffering in the undying flame, Juyo's expression changed as well. She knew this trial was meant to verify Mu Chen's identity. It seemed the ancient undying bird didn't want someone unrelated to it to obtain its inheritance essence blood. Juyo, what should we do? Mo Ling asked anxiously. The undying flame surrounding Mu Chen was growing stronger, almost as though it wouldn't stop until it had burned him to ashes. Juyo's beautiful eyes flickered. In the next moment, she gritted her teeth, brought her two fingers together, and immediately slashed them across her wrist. Blood instantly poured out like a column. She flicked her finger, and the blood shot upward, falling from the sky and landing on Mu Chen's body. Her bloodline was connected to the undying bird, and by pouring her blood, she hoped to help Mu Chen. Her expectations proved correct as her blood drenched him. Mu Chen's body, now a blood-soaked figure, began to show signs of recovery. The crystal flame's intensity gradually weakened. The agonizing burning pain finally faded, and Mu Chen's distorted face slowly returned to normal. As he looked at the weakening, undying flame, his eyes suddenly flashed with a spark of realization. The undying flames are of the highest level, domineering and pure, containing vast vitality. If one is able to refine and absorb them, integrating them into their spiritual energy, it will surely make their spiritual energy everlasting, while also increasing its quality to the next tier. Since these treasures have caused him such great suffering, they should, of course, bring him some benefits in return. It would be a waste to let them dissipate like this. With this thought, Mu Chen no longer hesitated. A powerful suction surged within his body as he forcibly drew in the crystal-like flames, pouring them into the supreme Seas. These undying flames entered the supreme sea. They immediately began to scorch the spiritual energy within, causing it to boil. However, Mu Chen was unafraid. With a thought, he activated his spiritual power, creating a flood that swept the crystal-like flames into his spiritual ocean. There, amid repeated burns, they slowly began to condense. When the undying flames had exhausted all their power and faded away, the quality of the spiritual energy in his supreme sea would surely rise again, taking another step forward. This would undoubtedly greatly enhance his combat strength. Before the stone statue, the crystal flames burning on Mu Chen's body gradually contracted, eventually fading completely as the flames dissipated. Golden light surged across his skin. The burnt flesh and skin quickly healed under the power of the dragon phoenix. Body and its luster became even more intense. Beneath the pale skin, explosive strength was contained. Mu Chen relaxed his tightly clenched fist and cast a grateful glance at the slightly pale-faced Juyo. If she hadn't drenched him with her blood, he might have been burned to death by now. That vile woman. Bai Bin's face turned ashen with rage. He had been hoping for Mu Chen to be burned to death, at which point he could leap to claim the undying bird's essence blood inheritance. But he never expected Juyo to suddenly intervene, helping Mu Chen resist the flames and shattering his plans. At this point, he could only swallow his anger, unwilling to direct any more vicious glances at Mu Chen, for fear the latter might notice. When the final wisp of undying flame faded from Mu Chen's body, the undying bird statue in front of him once again burst into light. Mu Chen, who had already suffered a great loss, dared not be careless. He quickly stepped back, standing firm, afraid of being caught off guard by this cursed stone statue. Luckily, nothing unusual occurred this time. The statue's eyes now contained some color, no longer hollow like before. Its eyes lowered, as though gazing at Mu Chen. Eventually, its sharp beak slowly opened, from which endless light erupted. The light was a deep, bright red, and eventually condensed into a blood-red gemstone the size of a palm. Inside the gemstone, a miniature undying bird could be seen soaring. The moment Mu Chen saw the blood-red gemstone, even his composure couldn't help but waver. He knew that this was the essence blood of the undying bird's inheritance. Once he obtained it, Juyo would be able to perfect her bloodline. If fortune favored her, she might evolve into a true ancient undying bird, on par with the heavenly supreme. Mu Chen cautiously extended his hands, taking the blood-red gemstone into his grasp. Finally, he sighed in relief. The inheritance essence blood was now in his hands. The blood-red gemstone felt warm in his hand, as though flames were burning within it. Inside the gemstone, the miniature and exquisite undying bird flew freely, its flight a sight of wonder. Mu Chen stared at the undying bird's inheritance essence blood in his hands. Even with his steady mind, he couldn't suppress his joy. This arduous journey to the divine beast plains was all for this single item, wasn't it? With this, his task was complete, and the bloodline connection between him and Juyo would be undeniable. The elders of the Juyo Sparrow clan would have nothing more to say. Juyo catch. Mu Chen gently tossed the undying bird's inheritance essence blood into the air, smiling as he snapped his fingers. The essence blood transformed into a streak of light, shooting directly toward Juyo. 9 Nether grasped the inheritance essence blood, her delicate face betraying an uncontrollable surge of excitement. This phoenix blood essence was of paramount importance to her. If she could refine and absorb it, her undying bird bloodline would reach its peak. With the right opportunity in the future, she might even evolve into a true ancient undying bird. At that stage, the entire great thousand worlds would take notice. After all, every ancient undying bird possessed the terrifying power to rival a heavenly supreme. On the altar, the other powerful figures from various races were left in shock upon witnessing Mu Chen casually handing over such a hard-won treasure to 9 Nether. After a long silence, they smacked their lips in amazement, their gazes toward Mu Chen shifting subtly. Able to give away such a priceless treasure without hesitation, such generosity was beyond ordinary men. Yet, Mu Chen paid no attention to their astonished stares. His primary goal in coming to the Divine Beast Plains was to help 9 Nether obtain the Phoenix Blood Essence. Given all the help and care she had provided him in the past, simply gifting her this inheritance essence felt far from enough in his eyes. Meanwhile, on the other two plazas, Zongtung and Lu Ho ultimately obtained the inheritance essence blood of the 10,000 spirit bird and the wild beast, respectively, an outcome that came as no surprise. Faced with such invaluable treasures, Zongtung and Lu Ho were overwhelmed with joy, ecstatically securing their inheritance essence blood. Their journey to the divine beast plains had yielded an incredibly fulfilling reward. However, amid their elation, Mu Chen noticed a strange occurrence. The colors of the three stone statues were beginning to dim, and the spiritual radiance embedded in them started to fade. Buzz. As the statues darkened, a faint tremor suddenly ran through the land. Though barely perceptible, Mu Chen's keen senses immediately detected it. His brows furrowed as he scanned the surroundings. Moments later, his gaze locked onto a particular spot, the very place whereby Ming had been gravely injured. The vast pool of blood that had once been there had seeped into the ground unnoticed, staining the previously dark earth with an eerie crimson hue that felt deeply unsettling. Mu Chen fixed his gaze on the land, and for some reason, the image of the mysterious black hole he had seen beneath Treasure Lake flashed through his mind, and a sense of unease welled up in him. Without hesitation, his eyes flashed, and he sent a low, urgent transmission to Nine Nether and the others. Leave, now. However, just as his voice rang out, before he could even move, the tremors beneath them intensified. A deafening rumble echoed as the entire altar began to shake violently. This time, everyone felt it. Their puzzled gazes immediately turned toward the darkened land beyond the altar, where they saw the ground rippling like the surface of a lake. A sinister aura surged from the depths, casting an eerie gloom over the sky. This isn't good. Something's wrong, run. Realizing the danger, everyone's expressions changed drastically. Even the dullest among them could now tell that the divine tomb garden was far from ordinary. Whoosh! A group positioned at the outer edge of the altar reacted the fastest, transforming into streaks of light as they shot toward the exit, attempting to escape the ominous region. Bang! But just as they crossed the altar's boundary, the darkened ground rippled again. A massive, grotesque face emerged, its twisted expression filled with malevolence. Its enormous mouth opened wide, and a billowing wave of black mist erupted like a raging storm. In an instant, the fleeing figures were engulfed. Their desperate screams rang out as their bodies exploded into clouds of blood mist, which were swiftly devoured by the monstrous face in a single gulp. KH. After swallowing the blood mist, the face on the ground twisted even further, emitting an ear-piercing, ghastly laughter that sent shudders through everyone's spiritual energy. A tidal wave of malevolent aura erupted, transforming the entire landscape into what felt like a demonic abyss. Blood. I need more blood. The writhing face on the ground locked onto the figures on the altar, letting out a chilling cackle. Its massive mouth opened once more, unleashing a torrent of black smoke that surged toward the altar, ready to engulf them all. The people on the altar, upon seeing this, turned pale, their eyes filled with fear. How could they not see that the demonic face before them possessed a power far beyond their ability to resist? Damn it, this must be a legacy left by those extraterritorial evil clans from years ago. Someone exclaimed in horror. The moment they saw this scene, it was clear as day. After all, that evil aura could only belong to their mortal enemies, the extraterritorial clans. Moreover, this place was once the site of the fiercest battles when the extraterritorial clans attacked the divine beast plains. Countless powerful beings from those clans had been slain and suppressed here, with some inevitable oversights. Buzz. A billowing black smoke swept towards them. Just as it was about to touch the altar, an immense light erupted from the altar. The light seemed to form countless mysterious runes, which twisted and churned, shattering the black smoke completely. The crowd on the altar rejoiced, their eyes hastily turning to look their astonishment. The three stone statues in the altar's three directions suddenly seemed to come to life. Three beams of light gathered on them, eventually transforming into three faint figures. On the body of the ancient Undying bird stood a noble, elegant woman in palace attire. Her grace was regal, her beauty enchanting, and her figure alluring. A noble aura surrounded her. On the myriad spirit bird, there was a man dressed in multicolored robes. He was exceptionally handsome, with a refined temperament, unshaken by even the collapse of heaven. On the ancient desolate beast, there stood a muscular, bare-chested man. His skin was dark, like iron cast, and his powerful body was as immovable as a mountain. Wherever he stood, everything felt steady and grounded. The appearance of these three figures caused the world to seem to stir, as if an ancient hurricane had been unleashed. An oppressive feeling that was impossible to describe enveloped the surroundings, and the demonic realm once again saw the first light of dawn. Those are the three beast sovereigns of the divine beast plains. Nine Nether exclaimed in shock. Even the most oblivious person could tell that these three figures were the lingering spiritual shadows of the three beast sovereigns. Heh. From a distance, the demon face on the dark land seemed to notice the three figures, and a harsh, eerie sound echoed. It seemed as if countless ghostly shadows were screaming within it. You suppressed us for thousands of years, thinking you could erase us. But in the end, it was we who were the better players. Heh. The noble woman on the undying birdstone statue stared at the demon face on the ground, and couldn't help but sigh softly. Such demons truly are dead, yet not gone. The handsome man in multicolored robes glanced at the crowd on the altar and said, "It's a pity. We thought we could hold on for another 100 years, but the inheritance essence blood was taken so quickly. This caused the seal to weaken earlier than expected. Humph. The demonic land has been stirred by the blood aura full of vitality. Who could be behind this?" The bare-chested man on the ancient desolate beast grunted, his voice booming like thunder, shaking the very air and causing the blood in everyone's veins to surge. The various teams on the altar exchanged glances and, without a word, turned to look at Mu Chun and Bai Ming. Clearly, it had been Bai Ming's blood, filled with the powerful vitality of the Phoenix clan, that had flowed into the demonic land, triggering this sudden change. Thus, the bare-chested man's sharp gaze locked onto Mu Chun and Bai Ming. Mu Chun felt a chill run down his spine, while Bai Ming, who had just regained consciousness from a coma, trembled in fear. Though the bare-chested man was merely a lingering spiritual shadow of the ancient desolate beast, it would still be easy for him to destroy them. But amidst their fear, the noble woman in palace attire shook her head and said, "This is not their fault. These demons had already prepared for this. It was only a matter of time. Now that it has happened, we might be able to find a way to deal with it once and for all. We three are merely spiritual shadows, and maintaining the grand formation is the limit of our power. We will not be able to completely eliminate these demonic shadows," the bare-chested man said solemnly. He looked around at the others and snorted coldly. "And these juniors are utterly useless, without even a 9th grade supreme among them. What use are they? How dare they try to take our inheritance essence blood?" His words made everyone blush, but none dared to refute him. In the face of such an existence, even these 7th and 8th grade supremes felt like ants. The noble woman smiled slightly, her beautiful eyes scanning the crowd. "I wonder if anyone here is skilled in battle formations. I have great fortune to offer them as a reward." Upon hearing this, everyone exchanged glances and then shook their heads in confusion. Clearly, none of them were proficient in battle formations. In the crowd, Mu Chen's pupils suddenly narrowed. However, he didn't make any move to stand out. He understood the situation well enough. No matter how foolish he was, the current scenario was something his current strength could not handle. If he rashly stepped forward, he would probably not even know how he died. As for that so-called great fortune, he decided to forget about it. He quietly shook his head at Juyo, not advancing but instead lifting his foot, preparing to retreat into the crowd. However, as soon as he lifted his foot, his expression stiffened, and he was suddenly frozen in place. He realized in horror that his body had lost control at that moment. As if it had been completely immobilized, he slightly shifted his gaze upward, and then he saw the elegant woman in palace attire, transformed from the undying bird, smiling at him. The palace-dressed woman gazed at Mu Chun with a smile, but he didn't feel honored at all. Instead, the back of his head tingled. The woman's attitude clearly indicated that she had discovered his talent as a battle formation master. He had never revealed this, but despite that, someone had seen through him. This made Mu Chen's heart tremble in shock. Could the Heavenly Supreme be this terrifying? With just one glance, it felt as though she had pierced through all of his secrets. The other powerful figures on the altar also noticed the woman's gaze. Immediately, their eyes turned, and They were stunned as they focused on Chen. He's actually a battle formation master? One of them couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. This was clearly a huge shock to them. If that were the case, did this mean that even when facing by Ming earlier, Chen still had a final trump card? Some of the strong figures exchanged looks and shook their heads with a sigh, increasingly feeling that Chen was unfathomable. The palace-dressed woman smiled as she looked at Chen and said, "Young friend, would you be willing to lend us a hand? If we don't resolve the trouble before us, I'm afraid none of you will be able to escape safely." Swish! All eyes in the surroundings turned toward Chen, their burning gazes tightening his chest. If he refused now, it seemed that these people would rush at him like wolves without needing the three beast sovereigns to intervene. Geo also gave a bitter smile at the scene. The Undying Bird Senior's eyes were too sharp, seeing right through Chen's trump card and leaving him with no way to hide at this point. Chen realized he couldn't retreat any longer. He could only grit his teeth and say, "Senior, you overestimate me. With my mere 7th grade supreme strength, how could I change the situation here? Whether it works or not, we'll have to try." The shirtless man transformed from the wild beast snorted coldly. "The disaster caused by your juniors should naturally be resolved by you." Hearing this, Chen's face turned a bit pale. Although he admitted the situation might have something to do with them, it certainly wasn't the main cause. This wild beast was really quick to shift the blame. However, reasoning with someone who had once been a heavenly supreme was obviously a foolish thing to do. So Chen could only force a smile and said nothing more. Heh. As they were speaking, the demonic face outside the altar seemed to grow even larger and more hideous. That it emitted sharp, eerie laughter, and suddenly, its giant mouth opened wide. Waves of demonic smoke poured out like a roaring demonic dragon, sweeping toward the altar. Humph. The refined man, transformed from the 10,000 spirit bird, snorted coldly. With a flick of his sleeve, a burst of colorful light erupted. The radiant glow was dazzling, and within it contained mysterious power. As it swept through, it directly repelled the overwhelming demonic smoke. Both sides began to erode each other, and in the process, the space within a radius of tens of thousands of feet began to collapse, like shattered glass. Chen and the others on the altar looked at the nearly world-destroying destruction, their scalps tingling. The kind of power they were witnessing could reduce them to ashes with even the slightest impact. However, with time, it was clear to everyone that the colorful light was crumbling bit by bit, while the demonic smoke seemed endless, continuously pouring from the demonic mouth, as if it wouldn't stop until the altar was obliterated. The people on the altar watched in fear. If even the spiritual shadows of the three beast sovereigns couldn't withstand this demonic shadow, it seemed all of them would turn to blood food today. This demon is becoming more and more troublesome. The shirtless man, who had transformed from the wild beast, also looked somewhat more solemn. He immediately struck out with a palm, sending a colossal palm imprint, tens of thousands of feet large, appearing out of thin air. The imprint was engraved with countless ancient runes, and with that strike, it seemed as though even the heavens and earth could not bear its weight. With the wild beast's help, the rolling demonic smoke could no longer approach the altar, and the two sides were locked in a stalemate, continuing their fierce struggle in the sky. Kai. However, this stalemate did not last long. The demon face let out a sharp scream again, and the ground of the demonic land trembled, cracking open countless fissures. From these cracks, a flood of demonic shadows poured out, bringing with them a tidal wave of demonic aura, darkening the sky. This demon face had clearly prepared for this day for countless years. Once it launched its offensive, it was so terrifying that even the spiritual shadows of the three beast sovereigns were forced to retreat step by step. After all, at the moment, they were only spiritual shadows, not their true forms. Seeing this, Chen, who was standing on the altar, also grew completely serious. At first, he thought the presence of three beast sovereigns would provide some protection, but now it seemed that this tree was not as sturdy as imagined. If the spiritual shadows of the three beast sovereigns dissipated, none of them would be able to escape. But this demon is terrifyingly strong. This demon was formed from the lingering resentment of 5 fallen extraterritorial clan kings. It has devoured the corpses of countless fallen extraterritorial experts to take shape. However, when it was discovered, we three had already fallen, so we could only leave behind our spiritual shadows to suppress it. The beautiful woman in palace attire glanced at Chen and spoke in a solemn tone. Upon hearing this, Chen and the others sucked in a cold breath. No wonder this demon was so terrifying. It was formed from the lingering resentment of 5 extraterritorial clan kings. These 5 kings were equivalent to 5 heavenly supremes in the great thousand worlds. No wonder even the spiritual shadows of the 3 beast sovereigns were struggling to deal with it. It turned out this demon's origins were extraordinary. May I ask what I should do, Senior? Chen cupped his hands and asked. Kill this demon completely. The palace-dressed woman said solemnly, her tone carrying a murderous intent. Chen froze, then smiled bitterly. With my current strength, even if I exert all my power, I'm afraid I won't be able to harm this demon in the slightest. Hearing this, the woman in palace attire smiled gracefully. She then waved her jade hand, and immediately, endless light erupted from the altar. The ground of the altar rippled with waves, and one by one, silhouettes slowly rose from the altar, eventually standing still upon it. Everyone focused their attention and saw that each of these figures was wearing beast armor. Their eyes were closed, their bodies massive, and a terrifying aura of slaughter surrounded them, their killing intent overwhelming, as if they were reincarnated gods of death. Each of these figures possessed strength comparable to Chen and the others. What's more, their momentum was incredibly overwhelming, far beyond what Chen and his companions could match. The most shocking thing was the number of these figures. There were tens of thousands of them. This was a terrifying army of tens of thousands of powerful warriors, clearly a formidable force. This army was far more powerful than any Chen had seen before. If such a powerful army could be commanded, even a heavenly supreme-level powerhouse would not dare to challenge them. This is the legendary Heavenly Beast Army. While Chen was still in awe of this army, horrified voices suddenly rose from the altar as many powerful figures stared dumbstruck. Heavenly Beast Army. Chen was unfamiliar with the term. He was not from the divine beast lineage, so naturally, he did not know these secrets. In ancient times, under the command of the 3 beast sovereigns of the divine beast plains, there was a terrifyingly powerful army. This army possessed the power to slay Earth Supremes, and this army was known as the Heavenly Beast Army. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the very same one, Nine Nether exclaimed from the side. Upon hearing this, Chen was deeply shocked. An army capable of slaying Earth Supremes. How terrifying must it be? Such an elite force was likely the dream of every battle formation master. As long as one could control it, there was no place in the great thousand worlds that couldn't be conquered. The true Heavenly Beast Army was completely destroyed in that battle years ago. What remains now are mere remnants, crafted from the bones of some warriors, preserving a fraction of their former strength. These are the last resort we have to annihilate the demon creatures, the elegant woman in palace attire sighed softly. They were, after all, only spiritual shadows now, not the heavenly supreme beings capable of destroying the heavens and the earth with a single gesture. Therefore, they had to rely on various external forces. Furthermore, they were not battle formation masters. The Heavenly Beast Army of those days had been commanded by a close friend who was also a battle formation master. But now, they clearly no longer had that support. Senior, are you asking me to command this army to slay the demon creatures? Chen asked. The palace-dressed woman nodded. Chen hesitated. Although he was a battle formation master, he was at best a 10,000 runes battle formation master, still far from the level of a 100,000 runes battle formation master. The army before him might only number in the tens of thousands, but each warrior could match 100 men. In terms of power, this army could rival even 1 million or 10 million ordinary soldiers. But with his current skills, how could he possibly control such an immense force? If he tried and failed, he might be overwhelmed by the fierce battle intent, destroying his spiritual intelligence and causing self-damage. Seeing the expression on Chen's face, the palace-dressed woman understood his concern and smiled. She raised a jade finger, and a glimmer of light, like a feather, shot out, piercing Mu Chen's brow. This item will offer you some protection. However, I want to hide the truth from you. The battle intent of the Heavenly Beast Army is overwhelming. Even with my protection, it is indeed dangerous for someone of your level to control it. Therefore, the choice is yours, whether or not to take action. The palace-dressed woman said, her gaze fixed on Mu Chen, her tone slow and deliberate. Swish. Countless eyes were now locked on Mu Chen, and the entire army stood tense, watching him anxiously, fearing that if he refused, they would all perish here. Zhong Qingfeng, Kong Ling, Lu Ho, and the others looked at Mu Chen with complex expressions. Who could have imagined that they would need Mu Chen's help to escape from this place? Under the intense gaze of those around him, Mu Chen couldn't help but sigh in resignation. Did he really have a choice? For the sake of his own life, it was clear that he had no choice but to give it a shot. Otherwise, once the spiritual energy of the three beast sovereign spiritual shadows was exhausted, they would all be doomed. Moreover, with the status of the Undying bird, if he managed to accomplish this task, there was no doubt he would be greatly rewarded. That so-called great fortune had long since stirred his heart. Taking a deep breath, Mu Chen stopped hesitating, looked at the palace-dressed woman, and nodded firmly. Senior, give your command. I am willing to fight.